Snow drifted down in silent, shimmering waves over the massive iron gates of the Whitmore estate, settling in soft layers on the winding driveway that led to one of the country's largest mansions. It was Christmas Eve, traditionally a night of warmth, celebration, and family. Yet inside the luxurious estate, not a single sound of laughter or festivity could be heard. The house, despite its thousands of lights, felt cold. Alexander Whitmore, billionaire industrialist, widower, and one of the most respected and feared men in the business world, sat alone in his sprawling study sipping tea that had long grown cold. His mansion was full of staff, full of luxury, full of everything money could buy, but devoid of genuine human connection. Christmas had lost its meaning years ago. Outside, however, the night held a surprise. Shivering at the front gate, barely visible in the snowfall, stood a girl in rags. Her name was Lena, a thin, exhausted 16-year-old carrying nothing but a worn leather satchel and a crumpled envelope, her only proof that she was meant to be there. She had traveled 2 days by bus, skipped meals, and walked the last 2 miles in the snow after the final connecting bus broke down. Her shoes were soaked through, her fingers were numb. But she refused to turn back. She pressed the intercom button with shaking hands. Hello. I'm here for the work placement program. The guards were stunned. They weren't expecting anyone, let alone a child dressed in rags, with tangled hair and a face pale from cold. The Whitmore estate wasn't the kind of place applicants usually came unannounced. Most were selected from elite schools or recommended by corporate partners. But Lena? She looked like she had climbed out of a different world entirely, one where life was harsher, hungrier, and far less forgiving. Are you sure you're at the right place? A guard asked suspiciously. Lena nodded, clutching the envelope like it was her lifeline. I was assigned here. Please, I just need a chance to work. Her voice cracked, not from fear, but exhaustion. The guards hesitated, whispering among themselves. They were accustomed to seeing politicians, CEOs, and international guests, not frail girls in torn sleeves. Yet something in Lena's eyes made them pause. A quiet strength, a stubborn determination, a fire that refused to die out despite everything she had endured. Finally, one of the guards sighed. Fine, come in, but wait in the main hall. We'll call Mr. Whitmore. Lena followed them through the towering doors and into a world she had only seen in magazines and shop windows. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, walls lined with priceless art. For a moment, she wondered if she should leave, run away before someone realized she didn't belong. But something inside her insisted she stay. She had come too far. She had nothing else. Minutes later, a tall figure appeared in the hallway. Alexander Whitmore. He stopped the moment he saw her, this trembling girl in ragged clothes, standing like a shadow in the vast corridor. He could tell instantly that she wasn't lying, nor was she prepared for the harshness of a mansion like his. But what struck him the most was her eyes. They held a mix of fear and fierce resilience, the kind he had only ever seen in people who had survived too much. Who are you? He asked quietly. Lena swallowed hard. Sir, I'm here to work. I don't want pity. I just need a chance. The simplicity of her words hit him harder than he expected. And for the first time in many years, something inside Alexander softened. He saw her worth before she ever understood it herself. The next morning, sunlight spilled into the Whitmore estate like liquid gold, illuminating polished floors and ornate walls that seemed to gleam with quiet pride. But for Lena, waking up in the tiny attic room the staff assigned her, the house still felt overwhelmingly large, and painfully unwelcoming. Her bed creaked as she sat up. It was softer than any bed she had slept in before, yet she barely rested. The night had been restless, filled with anxiety and whispered doubts. The mansion wasn't just bigger than anything she knew, it felt like a world she wasn't meant to step into. She smoothed out her simple dress, trying to make the faded fabric look less out of place. Then she took a deep breath and stepped into the hallway. The whispers began instantly. Is that her? Where did they pick that girl from? She looks like she belongs in a shelter, not here. Lena lowered her gaze and hurried past them, pretending not to hear. She had heard far worse before. But here, in this place where everyone stood tall and groomed and well-fed, their words felt sharper, like tiny knives. By the time she reached the kitchen, several staff members were already gathered around the long marble counter. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Hawthorne, a stern woman with icy eyes, glared at her as if she were a stain on her spotless floor. "So," Mrs. Hawthorne said, arms crossed. "The new girl finally shows up." Lena bowed her head. "Good morning. You will clean the east hallway, dust the library shelves, polish the silverware, and scrub the floors before lunch." Mrs. Hawthorne rattled off the list with a smirk. "If you finish early, I'll give you more. Understood?" Lena nodded nervously. "Yes, ma'am." A few maids snickered behind her. "That list would take 2 people 6 hours. She won't make it. She'll be gone by tonight." But Lena stepped forward anyway, took the cleaning supplies they shoved at her, and walked out with quiet determination. The hardest morning. The east hallway was longer than she expected, stretching endlessly like a gleaming tunnel of portraits and tall windows. Lena dropped to her knees and began scrubbing. The cold tile seeped into her bones, but she pushed through. By the time she finished the first hallway, her knees were raw. Next came the library, massive, silent, intimidating. The shelves seemed to touch the sky. Dusting them felt impossible, especially with the tiny cleaning cloth she was given. But she climbed the ladder, book by book, shelf by shelf, ignoring the ache in her arms. Then the silver room, dozens upon dozens of utensils, trays, and goblets. Her fingers cramped after the first few pieces, but she continued polishing until she could see her own reflection, tired, pale, but still trying. Alexander watches. What Lena didn't know was that Alexander Whitmore saw everything. He had walked past the east hallway that morning, surprised to see her kneeling alone, cleaning a corridor that usually took 2 maids to maintain. Later, he passed the library and found her on the ladder, dusting the highest shelves with trembling hands. And after lunch, he noticed her wiping silverware, fingers red and swollen. He said nothing, yet, but made careful notes in his mind. This girl worked harder than anyone. And she never complained. Hurtful words. Later that afternoon, Lena overheard the staff again. "She's useless. She won't last a week. Look at her hands. Poor thing probably never held a real job. She should just leave before she embarrasses herself." Lena felt tears sting her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She finished her tasks, every painful, exhausting one of them, then returned to her attic room long after the others had gone home. She fell on the bed, her hands shaking, her body sore. But before she drifted into sleep, one thought stayed with her. "I will not give up. Not here, not after everything." Little did she know, Alexander Whitmore was thinking the very same thing as he watched the security footage. "This girl has more strength than anyone in this house." Days passed, then a week, and though the mansion remained as cold and formal as ever, something subtle began to change. Lena was still treated like an outsider. The whispers still followed her like shadows. The tasks were still unreasonably heavy. But she never once arrived late, never once left early, and never once asked for lighter duties. Still, loneliness clung to her like a second skin. One evening, after finishing a long list of chores, Lena slipped quietly into the servants' pantry, the only room where she felt invisible enough to breathe. She sat on an overturned bucket, pulled a scrap of paper from her satchel, and began to draw. Her strokes were quick, instinctive, almost desperate. Drawing had been her escape since childhood. When she had nothing, when hunger gnawed at her, when the other kids at the orphanage mocked her, she drew. It was the only place she felt safe. The only place she didn't feel small. In just minutes, a soft charcoal outline became a lifelike portrait of the housemaid she'd seen earlier. Her hands moved without hesitation, building shadows, capturing details most people overlooked. She had no formal training, only pure instinct and raw talent. But she didn't know someone was watching. Alexander Whitmore stood at the doorway, frozen. He had come downstairs to search for a document he left in the kitchen office. But on his way, he saw the thin silhouette of the girl sitting quietly in the pantry. At first, he intended to walk past without disturbing her, but the sight of her drawing stopped him mid-step. He had seen countless artists. His companies sponsored galleries and exhibitions. He had donated to art schools and attended private auctions. But the way Lena's hand moved, the way she captured emotion, it was something else entirely. He approached slowly, clearing his throat. Lena jumped, startled, nearly dropping her pencil. Sir. I'm sorry. I didn't take anything, I swear, I just. Calm down, Alexander said gently, raising his hand. May I see it? Her face flushed with embarrassment. She hesitated, then handed him the sketch with trembling fingers. Alexander lifted the paper carefully. The drawing was breathtaking. You drew this? He asked quietly. Lena nodded, chewing her lip. I know it's not good. I draw to feel less lost. He looked at her sharply. Not because he doubted her, but because he recognized something he rarely saw. Genius hidden beneath self-doubt. Lena, he said, still studying the portrait, this is remarkable. She looked confused. No one had ever used such a word for anything she did. Really? Yes, he said simply. Really? For the first time since she arrived, her shoulders loosened. A small, shy smile appeared. It lasted only a moment, but Alexander noticed it, and it struck him deeply. A quiet beginning. From that night onward, something new began. Alexander started leaving small items near the pantry table. A box of pencils. A set of charcoal sticks. A blank sketchbook with her initials printed in gold. He never handed them to her directly. He didn't want to overwhelm her. But every time she saw a new item, Lena knew exactly who it was from. She cherished them like treasures. Whenever her work was done, she slipped away to draw faces of the staff, corners of the mansion, even portraits of Alexander from memory. She improved rapidly, each page stronger, more confident, more alive than the last. Art awakened a part of her she thought she had lost. And watching from afar, Alexander felt something else awaken inside him too. Hope. Pride. A quiet desire to protect this fragile talent the world had almost crushed. But talent, especially hidden talent, doesn't stay unnoticed for long. And soon, jealousy inside the mansion began to twist, coil, and prepare to strike. Christmas week painted the Whitmore estate in gold and silver. Every corner of the mansion was decorated, shimmering garlands, glittering ornaments, warm twinkling lights. It should have felt magical, festive, comforting. But to Lena, the decorations only made the loneliness sharper. She continued to work hard every day, scrubbing, cleaning, polishing, yet the more Alexander noticed her, the more the staff whispered. Some whispered out of curiosity, others out of cruelty. But it was the jealousy that hurt the most. Especially from Mrs. Hawthorne, the head housekeeper. Mrs. Hawthorne had spent years running the mansion like a kingdom. She liked order, control, and absolute authority. And she liked being the one closest to Mr. Whitmore's inner circle. Seeing a fragile, quiet girl like Lena catch Alexander's attention, even innocently, felt like an insult she refused to bear. She watched Lena carefully, waiting for weakness. Waiting for a chance to strike. Whispers in the walls. One evening, Lena was carrying a basket of folded linens down the hallway when she overheard two maids whispering near the staircase. Mr. Whitmore gave her new art supplies again. He never buys anything for us. She's not even pretty or smart. Why is he helping her? She's using him, obviously. Oh, he'll regret it. Mr. Whitmore always sees the truth eventually. The words felt like punches. Lena hid behind a pillar and waited for them to leave before continuing down the hall. She wanted to tell Alexander about the whispers, the disgusted looks, the resentment, but she feared sounding ungrateful. He had already done more for her than anyone had in her entire life. She didn't want to seem weak or burdensome. So she swallowed her pain and kept working. But not even her strong will could stop what happened next. The room of accusations. One night, the staff prepared the mansion for Alexander's annual Christmas Eve charity dinner, an event he hosted every year, even though he never enjoyed social gatherings. Lena had been assigned to clean the upper halls, away from the main activities. She was relieved. The distance gave her peace. But when she entered the storage room to gather cleaning supplies, she found Mrs. Hawthorne waiting for her. The head housekeeper stood with her arms folded, her expression carved from ice. "Close the door," she ordered. Lena obeyed, her heart pounding. Mrs. Hawthorne stepped closer, her voice low and sharp. "Do you know how many girls would kill for a position in this house? Do you know how many would give anything to be Mr. Whitmore's favorite? Lena's eyes widened. I'm not his favorite. I just work. Work? Mrs. Hawthorne scoffed. You think those little sketches impress anyone? You think you belong here, doing art while we do real work? Tears stung Lena's eyes, but she blinked them back. Mrs. Hawthorne leaned in closer. You're nothing but a charity case. A pitiful stray he took pity on. And one day, he will grow tired of you, just like everyone else did. Lena's breath hitched. And when that day comes, Mrs. Hawthorne whispered, you'll be back where you came from, with nothing. The words broke something inside her, something fragile she had been trying to protect. She ran out of the room before the tears could fall. Breaking point in the snow. That night, while the mansion buzzed with guests, laughter, and carols, Lena packed her few belongings into her satchel. The pencils, the charcoal sticks, the sketchbook Alexander had left for her, and the original letter that brought her there. She left a note on her pillow. Thank you for believing in me. But I don't belong here. Sneaking out was easy. Everyone was busy. The Christmas lights illuminated her path as she stepped into the freezing night, snowflakes landing on her eyelashes like tiny, cold reminders of her past. She walked toward the gates, each step heavier than the last. Inside the mansion, Alexander returned to check on her, only to find her room empty and her note lying like a quiet heartbreak on the bed. His heart jolted. He sprinted down the hall, out the front door, calling her name through the icy wind. Lena, stop, please. She turned around slowly, tears glistening on her cheeks. Sir, I don't want to be a burden. Alexander's voice shook. You aren't. You're the first warmth this house has felt in years. The Christmas lights glowed behind him. And for the first time, Lena let herself believe that maybe someone truly cared. The snow continued to fall, blanketing the landscape in soft white as Alexander approached Lena at the gate. His breath formed clouds in the freezing air, but his voice was warm, warmer than anything she had ever known. Come back inside, he said gently, stepping toward her. You deserve to be here. Lena shook her head weakly, her satchel clutched against her chest. No, sir, everyone hates me. They whisper things. They say I'm not worthy to work here. And maybe they're right. Her voice cracked, but Alexander heard more pain than uncertainty. He took a slow breath, fighting the rising anger, not at her, but at the people who had made her feel this way. Lena, he said quietly, you are not here because of pity. You are here because you earned it. He paused. And because I see something in you the world almost crushed. Lena blinked away tears. But I don't belong in a place like this. I'm nobody. Alexander shook his head firmly. No, you are somebody. Someone who works harder than anyone in that mansion. Someone who has talent that cannot be taught. Someone who is brave enough to start over with nothing. Her lips trembled. No one ever said things like that to me before. Then let me be the first of many. Something in his tone, gentle yet solid, wrapped around her like a shield. For the first time in years, she felt safe. Very slowly, Lena stepped forward. Alexander extended his hand. She hesitated only a second before placing her cold fingers in his warm palm. Together, they walked back toward the glowing mansion. A new order in the house. When they entered, the staff grew silent. The maids froze mid-step. Mrs. Hawthorne stiffened, pretending to adjust a vase. Everyone watched as Alexander guided Lena into the main hall, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder. He stopped in the center of the room. Everyone, he began, his voice echoing with authority, I have something to say. The staff exchanged uneasy glances. Mrs. Hawthorne swallowed hard. Alexander continued, this young woman came into this home with nothing but determination and a willingness to work. She has been mistreated, judged, and pushed aside. Eyes dropped. Some faces paled. But let me make one thing clear, he said sharply. She is under my protection. She is to be treated with respect. Not because I say so, but because she has earned it. Lena stared at him, stunned. Furthermore, Alexander added, softening, Lena possesses an extraordinary talent. One that will not be wasted. He turned to her and smiled gently. Starting next month, you will begin private art lessons. The best instructors. Full support. No obstacles. The room erupted in whispers, but none dared challenge him. Mrs. Hawthorne's face turned crimson. Alexander's eyes locked onto hers. If anyone undermines her again, he warned, they will answer to me directly. Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Lena felt her heart swell, not with fear, but with something she had not felt in a long time. Worth. The first of many miracles. Over the next months, Lena's world transformed. Her drawings evolved from simple sketches to breathtaking pieces filled with emotion and depth. Her instructors were astonished by her rapid growth. Within a year, Alexander arranged a small charity exhibition to display her artwork. It was meant to be modest, a quiet introduction. But the reaction was anything but small. Crowds gathered. Critics praised her technique. A famous gallery owner offered to represent her. 3 paintings sold within hours. Lena stood in the center of the room, overwhelmed as applause surrounded her. Her eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, but disbelief. Alexander stepped beside her. "You did this," he said softly. "You made this world see what I saw from the beginning." She wiped her tears and smiled, a real, full smile she had never allowed herself before. "Thank you," she whispered, "for giving me a chance." "No," he replied gently. "Thank you, for reminding me what hope feels like." Every Christmas Eve, Lena returned to the Whitmore estate, her home now, to place a single drawing above the fireplace, a sketch of a girl in rags standing at a gate, and a man who opened that gate when no one else would. It became a symbol in the house, a reminder that sometimes the poorest arrival can hold the richest potential. And that one act of belief can change a life forever.